Good morning, class. Today I'm going to continue chapter number 3, Genetics. It's a part 2 video. Mendel's experiment on inheritance. Who is Mendel? What is meant by inheritance? Inheritance is nothing but transfer of characteristics from one generation to another generation. Mendel is a father of genetics. Why he is called father of genetics? Because he discovered the basic principles of genetics for the first time. Who discovered the basic principles of genetics? John Gregor Mendel. In the mid-19th century, Mendel was an Austrian monk and he conducted breeding experiments on garden pea, that is Pisum sativum. Why he selected garden pea? Because garden pea has many varieties. Many varieties were available in alternative forms of a character, that is tall, dwarf, seeds are round, constricted, yellow, green, like that. Opposite, contrasting characters were available. Varieties were available in pure form that breed true. Pure form, there is no mixed characteristics. These varieties can be available in the pure form without any mixed characteristics. That is, it produced the same type of generation after generation. Peas are normally self-pollinated, but self-pollination could be prevented by removing corresponding reproductive parts of a flower and could as well as cross-pollinated artificially. So, here both self-pollination as well as cross-pollination were available in this kind of plants. That is why he selected Pisum sativum. Let us see 7 pairs of characteristics. Flower color purple, white. Seed color yellow, green. These are contrasting characteristics. Listen carefully. Contrasting in the sense opposite characteristics. The dominant one is purple and the recessive one is white. As I told you in the last class, dominant in the sense the character which dominates and executes its character. Recessive, subordinate one. Seed color yellow is dominant one and green is recessive. Pod color pea pod, the whole pod, green is dominant and yellow is recessive. That is why we can see more pea pods green in color, maximum green in color. Flower position, axillary is dominant and terminal is recessive. Plant height, tall and dwarf. Tall is always dominant over dwarf. Pod shape, inflated means straight and recessive one is constricted, wavy. So, Mendel crossed pure breed varieties first by taking only one contrasting feature at a time. This is called monohybrid cross. Say for example, Mendel took two plants of only one contrasting characteristic. That is, tall plant versus dwarf plant. So, as he is taking only one character to cross it, this is also called monohybrid cross. And then by taking two features, if he take two features, say for example tall and dwarf, green color pod and yellow color pod, like that. If he take two contrasting characteristics, then the cross is called dihybrid cross. What is cross actually? Punnett square. You remember in the last class I shown you what is meant by Punnett square. So that is called dihybrid cross. He tried with all the 7 features and his observations were similar for all. Case 1. Let us see first monohybrid cross. How many characteristics, contrasting characters we should take between two plants here? Only one pair. That is why it is called monohybrid cross. Crossing between the parents which execute only one type of character. Let us see now. A pure breeding plant bearing terminal flowers was cross-pollinated with a pure breeding plant having axillary flowers. First you should learn which one is dominant and which one is recessive. Here axillary flowers are dominant over terminal flowers. So the plants bearing terminal flowers he is going to cross with the plants bearing axillary flowers. Which one is dominant? Axillary. So in first generation he will get all axillary flowers. Let us see now. The resulting seeds after sowing produced all plants with axial flowers only, none bearing terminal flowers. Why? Because all terminal flowers are dominated by axillary flowers, because axillary flowers are dominated over terminal flowers. Terminal flowers are recessive in nature. That is why in first generation it couldn't express its characteristics. When these hybrid plants, so the first hybrid or the first formed offsprings are called F1 generation. The second formed offsprings are called F2 generation. F1 in the sense first filial generation. F2 in the sense second filial generation. When these hybrid plants F1 generation were self-pollinated, they produce in F2 generation plants with both terminal as well as axillary in the ratio of 3:1. But these three are axillary flowers and out of 3:1, 3 are what? Axillary flowers and 1 is terminal flower. These were the visible forms which we call the phenotypes. So the visible characteristics of a plant is nothing but phenotype. Out of this, one with terminal flower in subsequent self-pollinated generation produced all plants with terminal flowers only out of the other remaining 3 axillary flowers. This I have explained already, 3:1. This is symbolic representation of monohybrid cross. Here 1AA, capital A indicates dominant. If you are writing capital letter or uppercase, it indicates the dominant one. So 1AA produced all plants with axillary flowers. As axillary flowers starts with the letter, as the word axillary starts with the letter A, I am taking the axillary flower as a dominant one here. So both the genes, why I am writing here 2 genes? Here it produces the gametes. Which one? Parents produces 2 gametes. So capital A, and again 2 small a. Recessive one should be you should represent by using lowercase small a. You should not write terminal flowers as T. You should write only small a opposite to capital A. Again produced in the same ratio 3:1 as it was in F2 generation. Let us see terminal flowers small a. If you think it as a male, terminal flowers as a male flower and axillary flowers as a female flower, you can interchange it, no problem. Terminal flowers here I am taking it as a male flower, axillary flowers as female flower. So male flower produces what? Pollen grain. Pollen grain releases gamete. Which one? A, one gamete. Here axillary flowers, female, it produces ovule, releases what? Gamete, ova, that is capital A. When ova fused with gamete, male gamete, it becomes what? Capital A and small a. Here capital A is dominant over small a. So it indicates a pure one or hybrid one? Hybrid. Yes, it is hybrid, not pure one. Pure one in the sense both the letters should be same. Capital A or small a. But it is not that. It is both. It's a mixture of both capital A as well as small a. That is why it is a hybrid. Which one? Terminal flower or axillary flower? Axillary is dominant one. So this is axillary, capital A and small a. Hybridized flowers. It's a male or female? It's a female. Next, gametes. Again, if you self-cross the F1 hybrid, self-cross in the sense what are the possible gametes? If you think both one is male, another one is female, F1 hybrid, out of 4, if you see 2 are male, if you imagine 2 are male plants and 2 are female plants, the gamete possibilities are capital A, small a, capital A, small a. So if you take cross between these capital A and small a twice, self-crossing, this is also called self-crossing between F1 generation. So the gametes are capital A, small a, capital A, small a. When you combine capital A of pollen and capital A of ovule, it forms what? Capital A, capital A. That is axillary flower. Again capital A with small a, hybrid axillary. Small a, capital A, again hybrid axillary. Final one, small a, small a. One is terminal. So what is the phenotypic ratio? The visible characteristics are 3 are dominant. You can see 3 are axillary and 1 is terminal. That is why the phenotypic ratio is 3:1 and genotypic ratio is 1:2:1. Why 1:2:1? Small a are 1 capital A and capital A are 1. Genotypic, see both the genes are same here. So 1:1. And how many capital A small a are there? 2. So 1:2:1. This is genotypic ratio. Now case 2. Pure tall pea plants were crossed with dwarf plants and the progenies in the F1 and F2 generations were obtained as follows. Let us see. Here tall is dominant over dwarf. Tall, the capital letter, the initial letter is capital T. So you have to take dominant as T. Both the letters should be in uppercase or capital, that is capital T. Capital T indicates tall. Opposite to that, small t, dwarf. For dwarf, you should not write D. You have to mention the opposite letter, the lower case, small t. You can take whether it is a male or female. That's your wish. So in F1 generation, what are the possible gametes which produces tall as well as dwarf form produces? Capital T and small t. If you cross it, you will get all capital T and small t. See the Punnett square. All first four in first Punnett square, all 4 types of plants are tall, capital T, small t. Whether it is hybrid, homozygous or heterozygous. It is heterozygous. Why it is called heterozygous? Because there are 2 types of gametes are there, capital T and small t. 2 varieties are there. But capital T is dominant over small t. That is why you have to represent it as a what? Tall one. So all the plants in F1 generation are tall in nature. When you take selfing, self cross among them, what are the possible gametes? Capital T, small t again. If you put Punnett square, see the second Punnett square, capital T, small t from male, capital T, small t from female. First, take left as well as right one. Left vertical as well as horizontally multiply. First vertical, take vertical capital T and horizontal capital T. You got what? Capital T. Now vertical capital T, right side horizontal small t, capital T, small t. Like that, if you cross, totally you will get 3 tall plants and 1 dwarf plant. This is phenotypic in nature. Phenotypic characteristics. 3 tall plant and 1 dwarf plant. What is genotypic ratio? How many capitals are there? How many smalls are there? Cross check. Capital T is 1. Small t is 1. Capital T and small t are 2. That is why the number 1:2:1. This is called genotypic ratio. In F2 generation, the plants are 1:2:1 in nature. That is phenotypic ratio. Genotypic ratio is 3:1. In examination, they may ask you direct question like, in a monohybrid cross, what are the possibilities of F2 generation? What is the phenotypic ratio or genotypic ratio of F2 generation? Genotypic ratio is always 1:2:1 in monohybrid cross in F2 generation, and phenotypic ratio is 3:1. Now tell me, what is the phenotypic ratio of F1 generation in monohybrid cross? All plants are tall. What is genotypic ratio? 4. You cannot write genotype. You cannot specify phenotypic. Genotypic ratio here because all plants are same. This question is for you. This is case 3. Monohybrid cross between green pod and yellow pod. As you know, green is dominant over yellow pod. So you have to take dominant as a green and recessive as yellow. So what is the dominant characteristics? What are the gametes or possibilities of parent that you should take? Capital G versus small g. Take a cross, put Punnett square and write down F1 generation as well as F2 generation and its phenotypic and genotypic ratio. Yeah, solve it and show me.